Midnight, inside the U.S. Capitol, with over 12 million live viewers watching, Jasmine Crockett faces off against Elon Musk over damning accusations, tax evasion, labor abuse, and the secret manipulation of online information. Leaning on his fame and fortune, Musk tries to dodge the heat. 0:24, but just minutes later, with evidence so undeniable, Jasmine dismantles his defense. The chamber falls into a stunned silence. Power shifts. Reputations collapse. And nothing about the system feels untouchable anymore. What did she expose that could bring one of the world's most powerful men to his knees? Stay with us. 0:47, this story is worth every second of your time. Under the blistering lights of the U.S. Capitol hearing room, with over 12 million Americans glued to their screens, the stage was set for one of the most explosive congressional showdowns in recent history. Like vultures, reporters lined the back wall, pens poised, cameras humming as the name Elon Musk echoed through the marble chambers. This hearing wasn't about innovation. 1:14, it was about accusation. Accusations of tax evasion, labor abuse, and the silent stranglehold of online censorship. And at the center of it all, Elon Musk himself strolled in, smirking, unbothered, as if he owned not just the room, but the system itself. He didn't sit. He claimed his seat like a king returning to a conquered court. 1:43, his tailored suit whispered money, but his eyes screamed contempt. This wasn't a man on trial. This was a man who believed the trial was beneath him. Across from him sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, unflinching. The moment she entered, the mood in the chamber shifted from anticipation to voltage. She didn't carry herself like a politician seeking points. 2:06, she moved like a prosecutor seeking truth. Leaning forward with a smug grin, Musk fired the first verbal shot. You're a politician, not an economist. Let's not pretend you understand how value is actually created. The room froze, not because of what he said, but because of what came next. Jasmine didn't respond. No dramatic retort, no raised voice. 2:34, instead, with the calm of someone holding a loaded weapon beneath the table, she slid a thick, leather-bound folder across her desk and opened it slowly. Page 1 was marked with a blood-red tab. The message was clear. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to prove. And in that silence, thick as smoke and twice as suffocating, Jasmine Crockett struck. 3 o'clock, not with volume, not with rage, but with something far more dangerous, truth backed by undeniable evidence. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Jasmine simply turned the first page of the folder like flipping open the lid of a casket. And what lay inside was a kind of financial autopsy. 3:25, let's start here, she said, voice even, gaze locked straight ahead. Between 2015 and 2022, over $9.1 billion in profits from your companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and others, were routed through a chain of offshore accounts stretching from the British Virgin Islands to Luxembourg. She paused, not for drama, but to let the weight of those words drop like a gavel. 3:59, then she pressed a button on her tablet and a massive diagram appeared on the overhead screen. A maze of faceless holding companies, all leading back eventually to Elon Musk himself. Her finger hovered over one red-lined box. Here, she said, an entity registered in Bermuda with 0 employees, 0 office space, and yet somehow reporting over $400 million in annual consulting revenue. She looked up. Sir, that's not innovation. That's evasion. 4:29, the room tightened. Journalists leaned in. Aides whispered behind folders, and even the chairman's gavel seemed to still in midair. Flipping to a printed email chain labeled, Tax Optimization, dated mid-2018, Jasmine continued. This, she said, holding up a page, is your direct instruction. Shift projected earnings through Luxembourg shell to avoid U.S. liabilities. Goal, 0 federal exposure. And beneath that note, in Sharpie ink, Elon Musk's signature. Not a copy, not hearsay, the original. She laid it on the table slowly, like evidence in a criminal trial. The silence wasn't awkward. It was respect, even from his critics. 5:17, Musk had always been the man no one dared touch. But here was a woman armed with nothing but documents and discipline, dragging the myth of untouchable genius into the daylight. Jasmine didn't gloat. Her voice stayed steady, almost restrained, as she added one last line. While American families paid their taxes, you built rockets with money hidden from the very country that made you a billionaire. 5:45, and for the first time that morning, Elon Musk had no words. But what came next didn't just reveal numbers or loopholes. It exposed the raw, unfiltered arrogance behind the scheme. In Musk's own words, Jasmine Crockett stood still, her posture unshaken, her fingers resting lightly on the next page, as if holding back the weight of something she was about to unleash. 6:15, then she turned it over and calmly said, "Let's look at your tone, Mr. Musk." The screen behind her flickered to life again, this time showing an internal email dated March 2, 2020, marked, "Confidential, Executive Only." She read aloud, each word sharp and deliberate, not paying one damn cent to those idiots in D.C. Let them pass their fake budgets without me, the room went silent. 6:46, not the silence of confusion, but the silence of impact, of people realizing they just heard a billionaire declare open war on the country that enabled his success. For a moment, even the cameras seemed to pause, as if unsure whether they were documenting a hearing or a reckoning. Jasmine let the words settle into the walls, then added, "That was not written by a frustrated assistant. That was written by you, Mr. Musk." 7-11, and that language, idiots in D.C., refers to the very public servants who approved your subsidies, defended your interests in international trade agreements, and supported the infrastructure you rely on. Her tone was not angry. It was precise, steady, and deeply cutting. This isn't just about a tax bill. This is about contempt. Contempt for government, for law, for accountability, and most of all for the American people who pay what you refuse to. 7:46, she walked slowly across the floor, locking eyes with the audience, the senators, the cameras. It is not simply that you didn't contribute. It is that you laughed while not contributing. You insulted the very system that gave you your empire, then dared the rest of us to question it. And behind her, the email still glowed on the screen. Ugly, blunt, undeniable. 8:15, for the first time in his public career, Elon Musk wasn't seen as a genius or a rebel. He was seen as something far more familiar, a powerful man who believed the rules never applied to him. And as the email hovered on the screen, unforgiving, unedited, and signed in his own hand, the air inside the hearing room changed. 8:37, the illusion of control began to slip, and Elon Musk knew it. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes narrowing, not in thought, but in calculated defiance. His voice came out tight, strained under the weight of exposure. That quote is taken out of context, he began, his tone laced with practiced indignation. That entire email could have been fabricated or altered. 9:02, I've written thousands of internal messages over the years. How do you even know this is mine? It was the tone of a man used to steamrolling over resistance with confidence alone. But this time, confidence wasn't enough. Because just beneath the damning line on the screen, in unmistakable black ink, was a signature. 9:27, his signature, scanned from the original document and authenticated beyond doubt. There was no hiding from it. The silence that followed wasn't theatrical. It was procedural. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice or lean in. She didn't have to. Instead, she calmly retrieved another folder and opened it slowly. 9:53, this signature, she said, holding up a page with a side-by-side analysis, has been verified by 3 independent forensic handwriting experts, all under sworn affidavit. The metadata confirms the document's origin. The timestamp aligns with your own company servers, and the internal routing IDs match your executive email system. She let those facts land, not like accusations, but like weights pressing down against every attempt at denial. This isn't a misquote, Mr. Musk. It's a message. 10:25, one you wrote, one you signed, and one you clearly meant. Musk didn't respond right away. For once, the men who had built rockets, launched satellites, and defied entire industries had nothing clever to say. His mouth opened, then closed again, as if searching for a version of the truth that would hurt less. But there wasn't one. 10:48, the evidence wasn't abstract. It was physical, provable, and now public. And across from him, Jasmine didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She simply turned the next page in her file as if to say, "We're just getting started." The documents had rattled the room. The signature had broken the mask. But what Jasmine Crockett said next didn't just question Elon Musk's morality. 11:13, it challenged the very soul of the empire he claimed to be building. She set aside the tax files with a quiet, deliberate motion, then opened a thinner binder. This one labeled in bold, "Employee Statements, Classified." Her tone dropped lower, but every syllable hit harder. "Mr. Musk, I want to shift focus, not from your empire, but from the people who make it run. The ones no one puts on magazine covers. 11:42, the ones whose names you likely don't know." She glanced toward the audience, toward the cameras, then back to him. "These are real testimonies from real workers, 27 in total, from your Nevada, Texas, and Fremont plants." She paused for emphasis, then clarified. "Not contractors, not third parties. Your employees." 12:04, the screen lit up again, now showing a spreadsheet of logs, entries stretching to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Some worked 78 hours in a single week. No overtime, no benefits. And when they called in sick, they were told, "Miss another day and you're out." The room darkened, not literally, but emotionally. You could feel the weight shifting. 12:31, this wasn't about billion-dollar balance sheets anymore. It was about bodies, sweat, fear. Jasmine continued. One worker suffered a collapsed lung on site. He was told if he went to the hospital without finishing his shift, he'd lose his job. Another woman worked until her hands bled, literally, and when she asked for gloves, her supervisor told her, "You want safety? Get a job somewhere else." 1,300 hours, there was no rage in Jasmine's voice, just something colder, deeper. Grief, perhaps, buried beneath duty. Then came the moment that froze the room. With a small remote, she played a 12-second audio clip. The voice, grainy and irritated, rang out, "Asterisk if you need more than 2 minutes to piss, then maybe you don't belong here. 2 minutes after that, you're on your own time, and we don't pay for that." Asterisk. The courtroom was silent. No one blinked. No one moved. 13:30, because suddenly this wasn't about Elon Musk, the billionaire. This was about something uglier. A culture that punished humanity in the name of efficiency. Jasmine let the moment hang. She didn't rush. Then she held up a single sheet of paper, folded, creased, worn. This was written by a former employee, a first-generation immigrant. He worked 72 hours that week. 13:54, he was fired for missing one shift due to fever. He wrote, "Please tell Mr. Elon I'm not lazy. I just wanted to get better. I'm sorry." Her voice didn't crack. But her hands gripped the paper like it carried more than ink. "You call yourself a visionary, but I have to ask you, Mr. Musk. Is this what vision looks like?" She turned fully to face him. 14:18, because when people dream of the future, they don't imagine this. They don't imagine punishment for bathroom breaks. They don't imagine being treated like parts in a machine. The question she asked next wasn't for him. It was for the country, for every person watching from a living room, a factory, a break room at midnight. 14:45, is this the future we're letting one man define for all of us? And in that moment, Elon Musk didn't look like a genius. He didn't look like a leader. He looked like what he was, silent, still, and for the first time visibly cornered. The weight of worker testimony still hung heavy in the room. But Jasmine Crockett didn't let the moment dissipate. If Musk's empire was built on silence, then it was time to ask who else he had silenced, and how. 15:08, she turned back to the screen, this time revealing a different kind of document, one not measured in dollars or labor hours, but in names and voices. "Let's move to the digital side of your empire," she began, her tone firm but unnervingly calm. "X, formerly known as Twitter. Your acquisition, your platform, your rules." 15:32, the screen behind her filled with rows of names, verified journalists, professors, nonprofit researchers, climate activists. Every one of these individuals has reported one thing in common. Their reach was suppressed. Their voices muted. Their posts made invisible after they criticized you. She stepped forward. "Not the platform. You." The words were sharp, specific. 15:58, this wasn't abstract theory. It was a confrontation with motive. She tapped the remote and the screen displayed a single tweet, a clean, non-inflammatory critique of Tesla's environmental claims posted by a climate journalist from Oregon. Within 2 hours of this post, her article disappeared from trending sections. 1622, by morning, her account had been flagged for suspicious behavior despite a clean history and 0 violations. Jasmine allowed the image to sit there a moment longer before flipping to the next. A respected academic from MIT. This professor published peer-reviewed findings that questioned the integrity of your self-driving data. 1644, that same day, 7 of his most cited tweets had their engagement slashed by over 90%. Not removed, not reported. Buried. Then she brought up a third image. This time not a name most Americans would know. It was a screenshot from a small mental health nonprofit, one that focused on PTSD support for veterans. 1707, they had posted a series of testimonials from former SpaceX employees detailing panic attacks, burnout, hostile work environments, not political, not partisan, just pain. Real human pain. She turned back to Musk. And you labeled it misinformation. Their traffic tanked within 48 hours. Their donations fell by half. There was no need to raise her voice. The evidence did the shouting. 1736, a brief silence followed. Intended, not accidental. Jasmine broke it with quiet force. This isn't about moderation. This is about manipulation. About creating an ecosystem where criticism goes to die and praise floats to the top. Then she walked slowly toward the long oak bench where Musk sat, arms folded, his jaw tight. 1805, you've taken one of the world's most powerful communication tools, and you've reshaped it, not to empower truth, but to shield yourself from it. Her words landed like a slow-building storm. You say you're protecting free speech, but whose speech gets protected and whose gets buried? Finally, she reached the end of the aisle, turned fully to him, and delivered the question, not as a soundbite, not for the cameras, but with the full weight of a nation behind it. 1834, are you controlling this platform to protect free expression, or to silence anything that threatens your brand, your companies, and your control? No one moved. Not the senators, not the reporters, not even the security guards at the back of the room, because deep down they all understood what had just happened. For the first time, someone wasn't just challenging Elon Musk's business decisions. 1901, she was challenging his ethics, his narrative, and his legacy. And the only thing louder than her question was his silence. After being cornered by facts too solid to deny and testimonies too human to dismiss, Elon Musk did what powerful men often do when held to account. He redirected the spotlight, hoping it might blind the truth. 1932, leaning forward with the practiced ease of someone used to controlling the narrative, Musk let out a low, deliberate breath and began. Congresswoman Crockett, he said, voice tight but rehearsed, with all due respect, you're framing this completely wrong. His tone wasn't defensive. It was performative, laced with the condescension of a billionaire accustomed to deference. While you spend your time digging through internal documents and cherry-picking complaints, I've been creating opportunity. His hand gestured toward the gallery as if inviting applause. Hundreds of thousands of Americans now. 2006, have jobs because of what we've built. Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink. Our factories aren't just buildings. They're engines of economic revival. His voice rose slightly, feeding on the performance. I've reignited the aerospace industry, made electric vehicles mainstream, and connected remote communities through satellite internet. He spoke faster now, throwing out metrics like shields. 2030, we've cut millions of tons of CO2 emissions. We've launched American astronauts from American soil for the first time in nearly a decade. We're pioneering brain-computer interfaces that could one day help paraplegics walk again. The list was long, impressive, and completely detached from the accusations leveled against him. 2058, Musk wasn't addressing the workers who collapsed from exhaustion or the tweets buried in silence. He was invoking rockets and revolutions to bury reality under spectacle. Then his voice shifted colder. Frankly, it seems this hearing is less about oversight and more about optics. You don't want answers. You want a headline. The words cut not because they were true, but because they were calculated. 2125, I understand how politics works, he added. You need a villain. You need someone to point at and say, here's the bad guy. And since I have actually done something, since I've built what others only talk about, you've chosen me." He glanced at Crockett now, not with fear, but with thinly veiled disdain. "But let's be clear, you're not challenging corruption. 2145, you're challenging progress. You're standing in the way of people who are trying to build the future while you're clinging to the past." His arms folded across his chest, the performance complete. In his mind, he had won the moment, not with truth, but with volume. 2205, but what he couldn't see, what the cameras were already capturing, was the stillness of Jasmine Crockett as she listened. She hadn't interrupted once. She hadn't reacted because she understood something he didn't. Success doesn't excuse harm. Progress doesn't erase responsibility. And no number of rockets launched into space could outrun the weight of the human cost left behind on Earth. 2231, she didn't respond with a raised voice or rehearsed outrage. She didn't need to. The strength in her silence said more than any outburst ever could. She took a breath, measured, steady, and then leaned in, her voice quiet but unmistakably firm. 2254, "Mr. Musk," she began, "you've spoken at length about vision, about building the future, changing the world, leading humanity to new frontiers. But what you failed to speak about are the people who make that possible. The ones soldering wires at 3 a.m. The ones working back-to-back shifts because missing a day means missing rent. The ones who get injured and are told their pain is an inconvenience." 2324, she gestured toward the testimony folder again, not to repeat the facts, but to remind the room they were still there, still breathing beneath every word. Her gaze didn't waver. "I don't deny your ambition. I don't even deny your achievements, but I refuse to let you redefine success as something that can be built on suffering." The weight of those words hung in the air, pressing into every corner of the chamber. 2353, "You talk about pushing humanity forward, but forward to what, Mr. Musk? A future where workers are disposable, where speaking up gets you silenced, where human value is measured only in productivity per hour." Her tone never rose, but it sharpened like the point of a scalpel. "If that's the future, then I have to ask, who exactly is it for?" And then, with a calm that cut through the noise like a blade through silk, she said it. "Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for the people who never get invited into rooms like this. 2400 hours 30, innovation is never an excuse to trample human dignity." She didn't pause for effect. She let the words do what they were meant to do, land, root, and grow. Not in applause, but in conscience. Because Crockett understood that true accountability doesn't scream. It stands. 2400 hours 57, and in that moment, she was standing for every name Musk had omitted, every voice he had muted, every worker who had been treated as a number in a system that promised a better world. It's just not for them. She had already dismantled the myth of benevolence, exposed the cruelty beneath his factories, and torn through the illusion of free speech. But now Jasmine Crockett was ready to strike at the heart of the empire itself, its grip on power. She reached for a small remote. 25:25, no drama, no build-up, just deliberate intent. The screen behind her glowed to life. A grainy video filled the chamber. Handheld, slightly tilted, filmed at what appeared to be a lavish private gathering. Soft jazz played in the background. Crystal glasses clinked. The atmosphere was one of ease. 25:50, old money and new power mingling behind closed doors. Then came the voice, smooth, confident, unmistakably Elon Musk. On the screen he stood with a drink in one hand, gesturing casually with the other. He laughed, then said the words that seemed to hang in the air like smoke, "I bought this government, 26:13, I mean, let's be honest, these guys, they don't move unless I write the check." Another wave of laughter followed in the room on screen, but in the hearing chamber, no one moved. The silence was absolute. Jasmine didn't speak immediately. She let the footage play again. Just that sentence, looped once. 26:37, the echo of his voice in that sterile congressional space was more powerful than any gavel. Then she looked up, not just at Musk, but at the committee, at the audience, at the nation watching. Her voice was even, but beneath the calm was a fury so focused it sounded like steel being drawn from a sheath. 27:01, that recording was taken 3 months ago, she said, at a closed fundraiser in Aspen. We verified the location, the source, and the voice. Mr. Musk has not denied it, not publicly, and until now not under oath. She tapped again. The screen shifted to a spreadsheet, rows of transactions, dates, political committees, shell organizations. It was meticulous, clinical, damning. 27:24, Jasmine spoke clearly. This is a breakdown of more than $1.72 million in contributions made through intermediaries, third-party PACs, and so-called social welfare nonprofits. None of it disclosed in a way the average voter would ever see. But all of it leads back to entities controlled directly or indirectly by Mr. 27:50, Musk or his executive officers. She raised her eyes. This isn't campaign finance. This is quiet domination. Her words were plain, not dramatic, not embellished, just truth stripped of spin. Around the room, you could see the shift. Senators who had previously nodded during Musk's testimony now shifted in their seats, suddenly unsure of their posture. 28:18, one staffer gently nudged a notepad over a microphone, shielding a whisper. A Republican senator who had praised Musk's visionary leadership now avoided eye contact, his hands clenched beneath the desk. Jasmine saw it all and pressed forward. Mr. Musk, when you said those words, "I bought this government," you weren't joking. 28:41, you were confessing, and the evidence is right here. She held up a thick, tabbed folder labeled, Private Influence, Classified Disbursements. And then she delivered the line, not for headlines, not for applause, but because it had to be said aloud. You didn't just exploit the system. You tried to own it. 29:03, and now the American people finally get to see what that looks like. Reporters in the gallery had already broken embargo. Phone screens glowed with breaking alerts. The phrase, "I bought this government," surged on social media like a shock wave. Jasmine didn't look at the cameras. 29:29, she looked at the men who had spent a decade convincing the world that brilliance excused everything. And for once, Elon Musk said nothing, not a word, because there was nothing left to say. The numbers had been exposed. The recordings played, the illusion of invincibility cracked. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. Because behind every policy failure, every dollar buried in secrecy, was a human face. And it was time the nation saw one. 30:00, she turned to the chamber doors and gave a quiet nod. The cameras shifted, the tension rose, and through the center aisle walked a woman in a plain black dress, clutching a folded piece of paper with both hands. She didn't look like a lobbyist or an attorney or a headline. She looked like what she was, a widow. Her name was Rosa Alvarez. 30:25, her husband Daniel had worked 60-hour shifts at a Tesla battery plant in Sparks, Nevada. Jasmine introduced her gently. This is Rosa. Her husband died in a fire that shouldn't have happened, and she's here to tell you why. Rosa's voice trembled at first, but it didn't break. 30:51, Daniel was told to finish his shift, she said softly. Even after he reported the fire alarm system wasn't working, he asked to leave early. He was denied. Said the floor manager told him, "We can't afford delays." She paused, breathing in, steadying herself. 2 hours later, the explosion happened. You could hear people shift in their chairs. The scraping of pens stopped. Musk didn't look up. Rosa continued. 31:18, I got a call at 3:07 a.m. from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, it wasn't the company. It was a coworker who said Daniel didn't make it. He died trying to pull someone else out. She reached into her purse and unfolded a drawing. Crayon hearts, a stick figure with a cape. My daughter made this the next day. 31:45, she told me, Dad is a hero now, right, and I didn't know what to say. Jasmine stepped beside her now and held up a second piece of paper. This one written in a child's uneven scrawl, sealed in a blue envelope. This, she said, voice quiet but unshakable, is the letter Daniel's 8-year-old daughter sent to my office. She read it aloud. 32:07, Dear Miss Jasmine, my daddy died at work. He tried to tell them something was broken, but they made him stay. Please help. Don't let more dads be gone. Love, Alina, the words landed like thunder without sound, too soft to scream, too heavy to ignore. For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. 32:28, then slowly, as if moved by something beyond politics, beyond protocol, members of the chamber began to rise. First one, then another, and then the entire room stood. Staffers, press, even those who had once defended Musk's leadership, rising not for applause, but because they couldn't remain seated after hearing that. Jasmine said nothing more. She didn't need to. 32:53, she placed the letter on the table beside the financial documents and classified memos, as if to say, this is the most important piece of evidence here. Rosa stepped away, holding her daughter's drawing to her chest like a shield, her eyes wet, but her posture straight. 33:16, and for the first time that day, power didn't belong to wealth or algorithms or rockets. It belonged to a mother who buried her husband and a little girl whose plea now echoed through the halls of Congress. The applause had faded. The letter was back in its envelope. Rosa Alvarez had stepped away, but something far more profound remained in the air. 33:40, the absence of denial, and it settled like a final verdict long overdue. Elon Musk sat motionless, not adjusting his tie, not flipping through notes, not even pretending to rebut. For a man who had built his empire on boldness, who had dominated headlines, crushed competitors, and crafted an entire mythology around always having the last word, his silence was deafening. 34:06, his jaw was tight, his posture rigid. But there were no words, and everyone in the room knew why. The weight of the testimonies, the footage, the paper trail, the child's letter. It hadn't just exposed contradictions. It had shattered the illusion of control. No data point could counter what America had just seen. 34:29, no carefully worded statement could cleanse the image of a grieving widow or the sound of a child asking why her father never came home. Musk's empire wasn't being challenged by a rival. It was being held accountable by reality. Jasmine Crockett stood slowly. 34:50, no raised voice, no dramatic gesture, just the calm of someone who had told the truth from the start and now stood in its shadow. You have nothing left to say, Mr. Musk, she asked, not as a challenge, but as confirmation. No answer. She waited. Nothing. His eyes didn't meet hers. His lips didn't part. He sat. The richest men in the room, outmaneuvered not by wealth or status, but by the weight of what he'd refused to confront. She turned back toward the chamber. Her voice didn't thunder. It cut. 35:21, the silence of Mr. Musk is no longer just a tactic. It is a confession, and it is the one this country has needed. The words echoed in a way no gavel could. Her gaze moved across the panel, those who had defended him, those who had hesitated, those who had watched in stunned stillness as testimony turned into reckoning. 35:50, 4 hours, she continued, we have listened to defenses built on innovation, ego, and empire. But when confronted with truth, not ideology, not opinion, but truth, there were no words. She lifted the letter once more. This wasn't a smear campaign. This wasn't political theater. This was accountability. And now that truth stands alone because the men who should have answered it won't. 36:17, her words had no tremble. They were as sharp as the silence that followed. This hearing was never about Elon Musk, the businessman, she said. It was about whether anyone in this country, regardless of their net worth or following, has the right to operate beyond consequence. 36:42, it was about whether progress can justify pain, whether success can sanitize suffering. She paused. And when given the chance to defend his actions, to explain them, to show even a sliver of regret, he chose silence. Reporters scrambled. Phones lit up. But Jasmine didn't speak for them. She spoke for everyone who had been too afraid, too small, too invisible to ever sit in a room like this and be heard. To every worker who stayed silent out of fear. 37:12, to every whistleblower who was silenced by power. To every child who wondered why their parent never came home, she said, steady, unwavering, this silence is your proof. This silence is your justice beginning. Musk remained frozen. His silence was no longer strategy. It was surrender. His empire wasn't falling in flames. 37:37, it was cracking quietly right in front of a nation that had finally stopped looking the other way. And Jasmine Crockett stood at the center of it. Not gloating, not celebrating, but carrying the stillness with purpose. Her job was never to destroy him. It was to reveal him. And in that moment, she had done exactly that. Musk's silence echoed longer than any speech could. 38:00, but inside the Capitol, silence was no longer an option. The room had shifted from hearing to action, from exposure to consequence. As Jasmine Crockett stepped back from the microphone, the stillness that had gripped the chamber gave way to motion, fast, deliberate, irreversible. One senator stood, then another. Staffers whispered urgently into phones. 38:26, the chair of the Oversight Committee cleared her throat and addressed the room with a voice sharpened by urgency. Based on the evidence presented, she said, this committee will formally recommend a Department of Justice inquiry into potential criminal tax fraud, labor violations, and obstruction of regulatory oversight by Mr. Elon Musk and affiliated entities. 38:54, her gavel came down not in ceremony, but in judgment. Across the long mahogany table, faces that had once sat smug and indifferent now carried the tight panic of men watching the ground shift beneath them. A second voice followed, this time from the Judiciary Subcommittee. 39-19, we will initiate a parallel investigation into the pattern of political contributions tied to shell corporations. Then came another. And I will be introducing emergency legislation requiring full disclosure of all PAC contributions above $10,000 linked to tech leadership. Jasmine didn't speak again. She didn't need to. 39:43, the system, long dormant in the presence of wealth, was finally moving. Not because of partisan pressure, but because the facts had left it no choice. And through it all, Elon Musk said nothing. His counsel leaned in, his jaw clenched. His empire, so carefully constructed, was now under federal scrutiny from every angle. But what was happening outside was even more undeniable. 40:08, the cameras turned toward the Capitol steps, where a crowd had begun to form hours earlier. Now it had swelled into something larger, something historic. Thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, waving signs that weren't written in anger, but in resolve. No one stands above justice. Innovation doesn't excuse abuse. Dignity is not disruptible. 40:33, the chants were steady, rhythmic, not violent, relentless. A group of workers from California wore matching t-shirts, we built it. He buried us, veterans held signs next to students, single mothers next to union leaders, tech whistleblowers next to clergy. A movement was forming, not for punishment, but for reckoning. 41:03, one reporter pushed through the crowd and held a mic to a woman with tears in her eyes and a photo of her brother pinned to her chest. He worked for Tesla. He died from heat stroke. No brakes, no ventilation. This hearing brought him back into the light. Her voice cracked. We were told we'd never be heard. But Jasmine Crockett changed that today. 41:29, up on the Capitol balcony, the scene was visible even to those still inside. A senator stepped out, took one look, and whispered, "This is bigger than we thought." Across the country, television anchors interrupted regular programming. Social feeds lit up like a live wire. Breaking, federal inquiry recommended into Musk. 41:55, thousands gather outside Capitol for worker justice, and one headline repeated across channels, from Fox to MSNBC, stamped itself into history. The system finally looked back, and beneath that, an image, Jasmine Crockett standing at her desk, eyes forward, unshaken, not triumphant, just ready. Because this wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment America decided to turn the page. 42:24, the storm that began inside the hearing room didn't end with the gavel. It only changed form, and within days the aftershocks reached every boardroom, every newsroom, and every screen in America. 72 hours after Jasmine Crockett walked out of that hearing room, Washington, D.C. had transformed from a battleground of testimony into a command center for accountability. 42:52, there were no delays, no committee deadlocks, no endless procedural debates. What the country had seen could not be unseen. What had been heard could not be dismissed. The oversight chair called an emergency session at 6:45 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. By noon, with bipartisan support rare even in wartime, a special investigative committee had been approved. Its authority was sweeping. 43:18, subpoena power without limitation. Full access to private financial records.